Denial keeps us blind to the things we don't want to see because our minds don't feel we are ready to handle them. According to a famous author,
let me say with the greatest possible respect, it's a bit rich to oppress, enslave, kill, torture, maim people for 200 years and then celebrate the fact that they're democratic at the end of it.
According to a UK-based research firm, YouGov, 32% of people in Britain are actively proud of the nation's colonial history. Western opinion shapers often have a mistaken sense of world history since they tend to look at it from the prism of a colonizer. They function under the belief that the colonial and imperialist rule greatly benefited the colonized subjects by offering them the fruits of the Industrial Revolution and bringing them to civilization. Several renowned authors still believe British colonialism brought prosperity and development to India and other colonies. But a new study published in the journal World Development reveals horrific findings. Recently, a famous US news anchor, Tucker Carlson, who believes India's civilization is not ancient but just over 3 centuries old and gifted by the British to India, faced the wrath of Congress MP from India's Wayanad, Shashi Tharoor.
When the British pulled out of India, they left behind an entire civilization, a language, a legal system, schools, churches, and public buildings, all of which are still in use today.
As Carlson showered praises on Queen Elizabeth II, Shashi Tharoor expressed anguish. The latest study on the brutality of British colonial history is enough to disintegrate Carlson's half-baked claims. The research titled Capitalism and Extreme Poverty, a global analysis of real wages, human height and mortality since the long 16th century, authored by Sullivan and Jason Hickel, given a glimpse into the tragic episode of Indians under British rule between 1880 to 1920, the study highlights how Britain's imperial power was devastating for India during its pinnacle. With mortality rate as its baseline, the researcher found that 165 million excess deaths occurred in India during the period from 1881 to 1920. The study called this the largest policy-induced mortality crisis in human history. The sheer scale of the crisis can be compared with all famines faced by Soviet Union, Maoist China, North Korea, Pol Pot's Cambodia, and Mengistu's Ethiopia combined. The immoral ways of the British Empire, which intended to plunder India, have been highlighted time and again by Shashi Tharoor. From effectively destroying India's manufacturing sector to the drain of wealth, the policies of colonialism were anything but pro-people of India. The Bengal famine of 1943 stands out as a cruel example of British apathy towards Indians.
Between 15 and 29 million Indians died of starvation in British-induced famines. The most famous example, of course, was the Great Bengal Famine during the Second World War, when 4 million people died because Winston Churchill, deliberately as a matter of written minuted policy, proceeded to divert essential supplies from civilians in Bengal to sturdy Tommies and Europeans as reserve stockpiles. He said that the starvation of anyway underfed Bengalis mattered much less.
According to the latest research, colonial administrators were fully aware of the consequences of their policies and they looked away while millions starved in India. Despite such hard-hitting facts, several authors and intellectuals in the West continue to live in denial as India remembers its wounded past after 75 years of independence, with Indian origin politician at the UK's helm of affairs. While history and crimes of the past cannot be erased, the recent study bolsters Shashi Tharoor's stance on why Britain does own reparations.